Ivan was lathering his face vigorously. Okay, so when Stephens was arranging the tables, Ivan was getting prepared for the exam and all. And Jackson is warning him. That's where we stopped in the previous part. Okay, now Evans was very much prepared for the exam and he was obeying whatever Jackson was saying. Okay, Evans turned and nodded again. I was going to take them down anyway. A minister, isn't he? The chap coming to sit in, I mean. And how did you know that? Asked Jackson quietly. Okay, so actually, Evans had a hint that a minister, okay, that is somebody connected with the administration, an official is coming and he's asking him to come and sit. And Jackson asked how he know that. Well, I had to sign some forms, didn't I? And I couldn't help. Okay, so from the appearance itself, he guessed that it's a person. Evans drew the razor carefully down his left cheek and left a neat swath in the white lather. So Ivan is having a very good wash and he had shaved and he is now asked to keep the razor off. Okay. So we can see how a lazy, lamy fellow Evans is. He was up by 8:30 but still at 9:15 he hadn't even washed his face properly. He hadn't had the shave okay properly and also such a lazy fellow, a very careless fellow Evans is. Okay. He was not at all having any seriousness of going to appear for the exam even. Okay. And the invigilator was ready, everything was set. Okay. The room was arranged so that it had the all the amenities of the exam hall, but still Ivan was very lazy and he was not at all ready for the exam. Okay, now Ivan just keep on asking some questions to Jackson. Okay, now let's see what are the probable questions that he had for Jackson. Okay, can I ask you? Okay, children, he is intending to ask Jackson something, and we are sure that it will not be a very important question. Okay, in the beginning, also, we had the hint that Ivan was a person who used to ask persistently the questions. Okay, a lot of doubts Ivans used to have about everything. Okay, can I ask you something, Mr. Jackson? Why did they all to beg me in the cell? He nodded his head vaguely to a point above the door. Not a very neat job, considered Jackson. They are not. They don't honestly think I am going to try to. They are taking no chances, Evans. Nobody in his senses would take any chance with you. Now the question was, Evans wanted to know why the exam hall was set up in his own cell. Now Jackson said that they don't want to take any chance because Evans had already tried to escape from the prison 3 times. Okay, so it's not fair. They wanted to be very secure. Okay, so they are. Jackson said that nobody will take any chance of letting you escape from the prison. Who is going to listen in? I will tell you who is going to listen in. Laddie, it's the governor himself. See, he don't trust you a bloody inch, and nor do I. I'll be watching you like a hawk. Ivan, so keep your nose clean. Clear, he walked towards the door. Evans nodded. He had already thought of that, and number two handkerchief was lying on ready on the bunk, a neatly folded square of white linen. Just one more thing, Einstein. Okay. Now Evans was so much disagreeing with the idea of keeping this much eye on him. Now Jackson said that it's all because the governor wants them to do it because the governor not at all trusts Evans. So that's why he is under very much heavy security. Just one more thing, Einstein. Yeah, what's that? Good luck, old son. In the little lodge just inside the prison's main gates, the Reverend S. McCleary signed his name neatly. Okay. Now Jackson had made Evans ready for the exam. He had placed the white kerchief neatly folded and made him sit and all. But at the entrance in the prison's main gates, who had made his entry? Yes, Reverend S. McCleary has signed his name neatly in the visitor's book. Okay, children, whenever you go to prison and don't know, you have to write your name, your purpose of visiting, your time, everything. It's a recordical book. And then walked side by side with a silent prison officer across the exercise yard to D Wing, where he was greeted by Jackson. The wing's heavy outer door was unlocked and locked behind them, the heavy inner door the same, and McCleary was handed into Stephen's keeping. Get the razor, murmured Jackson. Okay. So Reverend McCleary, the invigilator, was ready and he approached Stephens and he handed over all his belongings. And even though maybe he had a check also, a body checking also. Now Jackson murmured, okay, he just remembered about the razor that Evans was having with himself and he's asking him to hand over to him. Stephens nodded. Well, keep your eyes skinned clear. Stephens nodded again, and McCreary, his feet clanging up the iron stairs, followed his new guide and finally stood before a cell door where Stephens opened the peephole and looked through. Okay, so even though it was a closed door, there was a hole to peep into the room. Okay, maybe we have this keyhole and all, no? Yes, likewise, there was a facility to look at the exam hall even though it was closed. Okay, now Stephens was in charge of keeping a very strict scrutiny of Evans by peeping through the hall. Now McCleary and Evans was left all alone in that room, in that exam hall. Okay, the cell of Evans which was made into an exam hall. That's him, sir. Evans, facing the door, sat quietly at the farther of the two tables, his whole attention riveted to a textbook. Okay. Now, Stephens is introducing Evans to the invigilator that he is the prisoner who is going to write the exam. But Evans was not at all caring all these things. He was very much involved with the textbook of German. Okay, who was learning very much. So the textbook was of elementary German grammar. Stephens took the key from its ring and the cell lock sprang back with a thudded metallic twang. Okay, now Stephen is taking the key and he is locking it up and he was just closing it with a thud sound. Okay, children. So now you should be very careful what all the small things that happens in the room. It's of very much importance. Now we have the invigilator and Evans locked up in a cell room. Okay, which is an exam hall. And Evans is all set for the exam. And who is there to uh, supervise him? Yes, Stephens is there on the door. He is peeping through the hole to keep in touch with whatever is happening in that room. I think so far is very much clear for you children. No doubts. I can say we have done with almost one part of the story. Okay, children, it's of 22 pages in your textbook. Okay, children, so read the textbook. Don't be lazy regarding reading the textbooks and all. So one section gets over. Okay, now we are going to learn about the examination, how the exam of events took place and all the connected events that happened accordingly with the exam. Okay, children, is that clear for you? So far I think it's very thorough with you and we are moving on to the next section. Okay, let's see. It was 9:10 a.m. when the governor switched on the receiver. He had instructed Jackson to tell Evans of the temporary little precaution that was only fair, as if Evans wouldn't spot it. But wasn't it all a bit theatrical? What do you mean by theatrical? Means a drama. Schoolboyish almost. But how on earth was Evans going to try anything on today? If he was so anxious to make another break, why in heaven's name hadn't he tried it from the recreational block? Much easier, but he hadn't. And there he was now, sitting in a locked cell, all the prison officers on the alert, two more locked doors between his cell and a yard with a wall as high as a haystack. Yes, Evans was as safe as houses. Okay. Now at 9:10 a.m., Governor just switched on to his receiver. Actually, he instructed Jackson to tell Evans of a temporary little precaution. And it was a fair. Actually, he thought that Evans will not spot it. But it appeared that it was a little much dramatic. A schoolboyish sort of thing. Actually, Evans will not try anything today because it was an exam day. If he had the intention of escaping from the prison, he would have tried it when he was in the recreational block. Now he is sitting in a locked cell, and all the prison officers are very much alert. And there are two more locked doors between his cell and the yard. And he was as safe as, okay, very much safe he was. Anyway, it wouldn't be any trouble at all to have the receiver turned on for the next couple of hours or so. It wasn't as if there was going to be anything to listen to, was it? Amongst other things, an invigilator's duty was to ensure that the strictest silence was observed. But, still that little nagging doubt. Might Evans try to take advantage of McCleary, get him to smuggle in a chisel or two or a rope ladder or actually, children, there was a communication device that was attached in the cell of Evans so that governor can listen to whatever conversation or whatever sound that occurs in his room. Okay, actually, an invigilator's duty is to make sure that there is enough silence. Okay, in an exam hall, you are demanded to observe silence. Okay, but still, you can imagine that Evans always used to have this nagging doubts, irritating doubts, and he may trouble McCleary. There was a possibility. Okay, he may smuggle him with a chisel. Okay, what you saw now is a chisel. Okay, he may trouble him, attack him. All these possibilities was there. The governor sat up sharply. It was all very well getting rid of any potential weapon that Evans could have used. But what about McCleary? What if quite unwittingly the innocent McCleary had brought in something himself? A jackknife perhaps? And what if Evans held him hostage with such a weapon? Now the governor, no, he was haunted by a lot of thoughts. Okay, he thought that Evans may trouble McCleary. Maybe McCleary had brought a knife for cutting the paper and all, and Evans may threaten him with that knife and make an escape. All those very thoughts was troubling governor. The governor reached for the phone. It was 9:12 a.m. The examinee and the invigilator had already been introduced by Stephens when Jackson came back and shouted to McCleary through the cell door. Can you come outside a minute, sir? You too, Stephens. Okay. Now the examinee, who is the examinee? Evans, and the invigilator was introduced by Stephens. At that point, Jackson is coming there and he is shouting to McCleary and is asking him to come outside for a minute. And he's calling Stephens also. Now let's see what's the matter. Jackson quickly explained the governor's worries and McCleary patiently held out his arms at shoulder level whilst Jackson lightly frisked his clothes. Something hard here, sir. My reading glasses, replied McCleary, looking down at the spectacle case. Jackson quietly reassured him and bending down on the landing thumb, flicked the catches on the suitcase. Now Jackson demanded a thorough body checkup of McCleary and he got hold of the spectacles of McCleary and he is now checking his suitcase as well in order to make sure that McCleary was not carrying anything, any weapons or a tool sort of thing, so that Evans may take the advantage of it. Okay, it's a quite offending thing because you are going somewhere as an invigilator, you are a priest and a prison officer is checking you and all. It's somewhat awkward. Okay. So McCleary was having a very thorough checkup by Jackson himself as he was instructed by the governor. Okay, in order to get rid of the governor's unwanted worries regarding Evans making use of McCleary to escape. Now he is picking up each envelope in turn, carefully passed his palms along the surfaces and seemed satisfied. He riffled cursorily through a few pages of Holy Writ and vaguely shook the church times. All right so far. But one of the objects in McCleary's suitcase was puzzling him sorely. Do you mind telling me why you have brought this, sir? He had a smallish, semi-inflated rubber ring, such as a young child with a waist of about 12 inches might have struggled into. You thinking of going for a swim, sir? So all the things that he checked in the suitcase of McCleary was okay. There was nothing to be doubtful of, but he came across a small semi-inflated rubber ring, and he had a question whether McCleary was thinking of going for a swim. Actually, McCleary's hitherto amiable demeanor was slightly ruffled by this tasteless little pleasantry, and he answered Jackson somewhat sourly, "If you must know, I suffer from hemorrhoids, and when I am sitting down for any length of time." Actually, so far at that time, McCleary was looking so pleasant, but at this question, his voice became somewhat sore, and he told that he is having hemorrhoids. Okay, like that means piles, and he is unable to sit for a long time. And this inflated rubber ring will help him to have a smooth sitting. Now Jackson felt very much offended on being asked some question like this, and he said, "Very sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." The embarrassment was still reddening Jack's cheeks when he found the paper knife at the bottom of the case. Now Jackson was about to apologize that suddenly he came across a paper knife. In the bottom of the suitcase there was a paper knife. Okay, "I think I would better keep this though, if you don't mind, that is, sir." And he wanted to keep that paper knife all with himself, and he is asking the permission of McCleary so that he can take that paper knife again. Okay, actually, what was the purpose behind bringing the paper knife, children? To cut the question paper. Okay, to tear the papers of answer sheets, all those things. We do have this paper knife. It was 9:18 a.m. before the governor heard their voices again, and it was clear that the examination was going to be more than a little late in getting underway. Now, I have told you the exam was supposed to begin by 9:15 a.m., but in between a lot of time was lapsed, and now it is 9:18, and there was a suppose that the exam may get late further. "McCleary, you got a watch?" "Yes, sir. I'll be telling you when to start, okay?" Now, McCleary was busy preparing for the exam, and he's asking Evans whether he was having a watch with him. Now, he's giving him further instruction that he will tell him when to start. And again, when you have 5 minutes left, all right, okay. So, in our school also, when we conduct exams and all, the teacher will warn you when half an hour is left, when 5 minutes is left, and all the instructions are given by the teacher, isn't it? Likewise, McClure is also saying Evans that I will tell you when you are having only 5 minutes left. Now you can start writing, and there is complete silence in the room. Okay, children, there is plenty more of this writing paper should you need it. Okay, so you have the additional sheets no in the exam and he says that yes, you may have these additional sheets if you need it. Now write the name of the paper 0211 in the top left hand corner. So it's the paper code, okay, the subject code. McClure is asking him to write it in the top left hand corner. In the top right hand corner, write your index number 313. And in the box just below that, write your center number 271. Alright. Okay, as you will receive like these instructions, no? In the board exam, you may have received these instructions. So likewise, McCleary is also giving him, Evans, the instructions on where to write which are numbers and all those things. Okay, so McCleary was very good in the way he behaved to Evans. Okay, he is not just seeing him as a prisoner. Okay, he is treating him as a learner. Okay, a boy who is writing the exam. Now at 9:20 a.m. I am now going to not going to stay here, sir. I don't know about that. Mr. Jackson's given me strict instructions to how I am supposed to concentrate on my exam with someone breathing down my neck. Christ, sorry, sir. I didn't mean. The governor reached for the phone. Jackson, good. Get Stephens out of that cell, will you? I think we are perhaps overdoing things. As you wish, sir. Now, actually, Evans was noticed that it is 9:20 a.m. and Evans is asking him whether Stephens is going to be with him in the cell. And he is showing a pretty opposition that he can't concentrate in an exam when somebody is looking at him, staring at him. Okay. And at that point, Jackson receives a call from Governor asking Stephens to get out of the cell. And Governor thinks that he is overdoing things. Now Jackson is doing as Governor had instructed him. As the governor heard the exchanges in the cell, heard the door clang once more, and heard McCleary announce that the exam had begun at last. It was 9:25 a.m. and there was a great calm. Okay, so the governor was able to hear the exchanges in the cell, and the time when the exam started was 9:25 a.m. and there was complete silence. At 9:40 a.m., the examinations board rang through and the assistant secretary with special responsibility for modern languages asked to speak to the governor. The examination had already started, no doubt, a quarter of an hour ago. Yes, well, there was a correction slip which some fool had forgotten to place in the examination package. Very brief. Could the governor please? Yes, of course. I will put you straight through to Mr. Jackson in Deaving. Hold the line a minute. Now at 9:40 a.m. there is a call from examination board. And who was that? It was the assistant secretary who had the responsibility for modern languages. And he wanted to speak to the governor. And the examination had already started. Actually, there was a correction slip and somebody had forgot to keep it in the examination package. And he wanted to communicate it to the governor. And yes, of course, he was connected to Mr. Jackson and he was asked to hold the line for a minute. Was this the sort of thing the governor had feared? Was the phone call a fake, some signal, some secret message? But he could check on that immediately. He dialed the number of the examinations board, but heard only the staccato blaze of a line engaged. But then the line was engaged, wasn't it? Yes, not very intelligent that. Okay. Now the poor governor, no, he always had all the things doubts. Okay. So he thought the phone call may be a fake call and there is some signal and there's a secret message to be conveyed and he wanted to cross check it. And now he is calling the number of the examinations board. But he was only able to hear the line engaged sound. Okay. Children, you know the sound when you have a number dial and it's engaged and all. 2 minutes later, he heard some whispered communications in the cell and then McClear's broad Scott's voice. Will you please stop writing a wee while, Mr. Evans, and listen carefully? Candidates offering German 0211 should note the following correction. Okay, now Governor was very keenly listening to the conversations that is happening and McCleary was asking Evans to stop writing for a moment and the instruction was given for the children who are writing this German O-level exam and he should note the following correction. Okay, now McCleary was conveying the message, the correction that was communicated to him through Mr. Jackson and Governor was very sharply hearing that conversation. So children, when during your exams also corrections may come, the concerned teacher may come and let you know on which page, on which question, what correction, all those things, isn't it? So likewise only here also the invigilator McCleary is asking Evans to stop writing and make the correction. So what was the correction? On page 3, the fourth word should read golden and not golden and the whole phrase will therefore read some golden and loven, not some golden loven. I will repeat that. The governor listened and smiled. Okay. So he is just saying the correction, nothing to be doubtful of that. And the governor listened to it and he himself smiled. He had taken German in the sixth form himself. and he remembered all about the agreements of adjectives, and so did McCleary by the sounds of things, for the minister's pronunciation was most impressive. But what about Evans? He probably didn't know what an adjective was. The phone rang again. The magistrate's court. They needed a prison van and a couple of prison officers. Remand case, and within 2 minutes the governor was wondering whether that could be a hoax. He told himself not to be so silly. His imagination was beginning to run riot. The governor was himself recalling the days he learned German, and he was very impressed by the pronunciation of McCleary, and it was all about the adjectives and all. At that time, suddenly the phone rang again, and this time the call was from the magistrate's court. Actually, they needed a prison van and two prison officers for a remand case. And within 2 minutes, the governor started wondering whether this is also another fake call, and he is asking himself not to be so silly because his imagination has now got worse. Okay, it was beginning to get worse. Evans. For the first quarter of an hour, Stephens had dutifully peered through the peephole at intervals of 1 minute or so, and after that every 2 minutes. At 10:45 a.m., everything was still all right as he looked through the peephole once more. It took 4 or 5 seconds, no more. What was the point? It was always more or less the same. Evans, his pen between his legs, sat staring straight in front of him towards the door, seeking, it seemed, some sorely needed inspiration from somewhere. And opposite him, McCleary, seated slightly askew from the table now, his face in semi-profile, his hair, as Stephens had noticed earlier, amateurishly clipped pretty closely to the scalp. So there was somebody who was entrusted with the duty of supervising Evans and the entire exam. It was Stephens who was peeping through the hole and having a look at the Evans then and now. In the beginning and all, he did the job pretty well, but later, no, he got bored because everything was the same. Whenever he looked, Evans will be sitting thinking as if he will get the answer from somewhere else and all. And McCleary was also there, and his eyes behind the pebble lenses peering short-sightedly at the church times. Okay, the invigilator, no, he was reading the church times, and his right index finger hooked beneath the narrow clerical collar, and the fingers of the left hand, the nails meticulously manicured, slowly stroking the short black beard. At 10:50 a.m., the receiver crackled to life, and the governor realized he had almost forgotten Evans for a few minutes. Okay, now children, we have that look of Mr. McCleary. Okay, he was very keenly looking the church times, and at 10:50 a.m. no, he is again the governor is again receiving a call, and he realized that he forgot Evans for a few minutes because he was busy arranging a van from the prison with two prison officials that is to be sent to the magistrate court for a remand case. Okay, so it is almost 1 hour after the exam. Evans, please sir, a whisper. Okay, he is hearing the sounds through that communication device. No, now he is listening, and actually Evans was asking something. Okay, he was asking, he was pleading for something. Okay, now as he heard that sound only, the governor recalled that he had forgot everything about Evans and the exam mentor. Now Evans was making again that same sound louder this time. Please, sir. Okay. Now what Evans was trying to ask to the McCleary. Okay. So that is a turning point now. For 1 hour there was no voice. Now Evans is asking, would you mind if I put a blanket round me? Okay. It was very cold climate maybe, and is requesting whether he can wear a blanket around him. Okay, and now we have to find out whether he was given the permission to wear a blanket. Okay, so children, do you think is it safe to let Evans wear a blanket and all? No, it is not at all safe. Okay, Maybe he may hide something in the blanket. Okay, there is something hidden in the blanket, and there's a possibility that blanket is not at all safe. So we will see whether he was given. He wanted to cover the blanket on his shoulders. It's a bit parky here, cold here, isn't it? There is one on me bunk here, sir. Be quick about it. So McClear, very innocent man, he is letting him wear that blanket because there was one in the cell. Okay, children. At 10:51 a.m., Stephens was more than a little surprised to see a grey regulation blanket draped round Ivan's shoulders, and he frowned slightly and looked at the examinee more closely. Now, after some time, when Stephens looked, no, he saw Evans covered in a blanket, and he was quite surprised. Now we will deal with the rest in the next video.